Disney. 5-minute spooky stories. Monsters Inc. Parade Day Dash. Mike Wazowski crumpled up the last piece of crepe paper and sat back to admire his work. "It's perfect," he said to his best friend, Sulley. Sulley hopped up onto the parade floats they had been building. It was decorated with balloons and streamers and had a row of doors in the middle, just like the scare floor. It was the best float Sulley had ever seen. And when he wrote it the next day, he'd be doing his favorite thing, scaring. Sulley crept behind one of the doors and threw it open. "Roar!" he roared. Mike put on his best announcer voice. "Introducing the grand monster of this year's Monstropolis Day Parade, Mr. James P. Sullivan." Every year, Monsters Inc. held a parade on the day Monstropolis had been discovered. Since Sulley had collected more screams than any other scarer that year, he had been asked to lead the parade. Sulley grinned. "Want to take a practice drive along the parade route?" "Sure, hop in," Mike exclaimed. It was a beautiful evening in Monstropolis. Main Street was already lined with flags, banners, and even sour lemonade stands. Then Mike noticed something strange. Someone was moving behind the grandstand. He took a closer look and then shrugged. Maybe his eye was playing tricks on him. When they'd finished driving along the parade route, they left Mike's car with the float and walked home. They wanted to be sure to get a good night's sleep. The next afternoon, Sulley put on his tall grand monster hat. Mike gave him a thumbs up, and Sulley grinned. The friends hurried off to Monsters Inc. They were excited to get their floats up and running. In the parking lot, everyone was getting ready for the parade. Some monsters set up floats while others carried balloons. Mike used a hook to attach his car to Sulley's float. "She's ready to go." He couldn't wait to start leading the parade down the street. Sulley jumped up onto the float, but when Mike put the key in the ignition, his car wouldn't start. "Of all days," Mike muttered, opening the hood. As Mike checked the engine, Sulley anxiously watched the other monsters start to pull their floats out of the parking lot. The parade would be starting any minute. "Everything okay?" asked Mr. Waternoose, the head of Monsters Inc. "We need you at the front of the parade, Sulley." Sulley explained that the car wasn't working. Just then, Randall came slinking up. "My float is working perfectly," he said to Mr. Waternoose. "Perhaps I should lead the parade?" Mr. Waternoose sighed. "I suppose that would be best. Sorry, Sulley. I'm sure you understand." Randall's float was covered in mirrors, all reflecting his sneaky image. "Sorry about your float, Sulley," he hissed. "Let me know if you need a lift to the gas station." That was when Sulley noticed a puddle on the ground next to Mike's car. He sniffed it. "It's gas," he said. Mike bent down to look, and he gasped. Randall's footprint! He emptied the tank on purpose. "That sneaky reptile!" Sulley exclaimed. "We won't let him get away with this," Mike replied. "We have to fill the tank and catch that parade." Mike and Sulley ran as fast as they could to get more fuel. Before long, they were racing out of Monsters, Inc. Mike steered the float alongside a marching band at the end of the parade. "Pardon us," Sulley called. "Coming through!" Mike honked his horn to the same beat as the giant tuba, and Sulley tipped his hat to the conductor. "Go get 'em, Sulley!" the band leader cried. The Monstropolis Day Parade was known for its giant balloons shaped like famous monsters. They hovered over the street, held down by strong ropes to keep them from flying away. The crowd cheered as Mike drove Sulley's float under a balloon in the shape of Mr. Waternoose. He gave the crowd a thumbs up, then sped on. Meanwhile, Sulley displayed some of his best scaring. He jumped out of different doors on the float and roared. The crowd clapped and whistled. Mike squeezed past the float with monster scouts tossing gummy worms and grasshopper cookies to the crowd. The monster scouts squealed with delight when Sulley jumped out from one of the doors, pretending to scare them. Suddenly, Mike had an idea. "Sulley," he called over his shoulder, "I'm going to pull up alongside Randall's float. I have an idea that will knock his socks off." They could see Randall blowing kisses to the crowd at the front. Mike expertly wove through a line of monster cycle riders until they were right next to Randall's float. Sulley knew just what Mike was thinking. He readied himself for the perfect moment. "So glad you can make it after all," Randall cackled to Mike. "Too bad you missed all the fun." But then Sulley burst out from behind one of the doors on his float and gave Randall the scare of his life. "Roar!" Sulley roared. Randall was startled, but the crowd cheered and clapped. They thought it was part of the show. "That was awesome!" a little monster called to Sulley as Mike drove them to the front of the parade. Sulley winked and tossed the boy his grand monster hat. The crowd applauded. No grand monster had ever done that. Along the way, Sulley pretended to scare the crowd, and they cheered. Sulley loved seeing everyone have such a good time. We hope you enjoyed the Monstropolis Day Parade. His voice echoed over the loud cheers. Then he announced, "Let the fireworks begin!" Boom! Sparkling lights exploded in the sky, lighting up the entire town center. As everyone oohed and ahed, Sulley smiled at Mike. "Thanks, Paul," he said. "You sure saved the day." Mike grinned. "Hey, what are friends for?"